Greetings, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is episode 5 of Now That's the Truth. My name is Terrence. I am your host. This is a follow-up, a part 2 to the previous episode, Love is Love, Albuquerque is Albuquerque. If you have not seen that episode, you need to go back and watch that one first before watching this one. But if that episode was Love is Love, this episode is Marriage is Marriage. We can poke fun at the love is love idea, like I did in the previous episode, and we can talk about the problems with redefining marriage to mean something entirely new. But I think the key thing is we need to know what marriage means to us. If we, as Christians, believe that marriage as an institution was really designed by God with purpose, and that if we do marriage the right way, that not only does it benefit us, but all of society benefits from the structure we get from the institution of marriage. Then instead of talking about what's wrong with the other view of marriage, I want us to focus on what's right as well with our view of marriage. That's what this episode is all about. Welcome back, everyone. Remember, if you like these episodes, you want to subscribe on my YouTube channel and share these episodes with your little buddies. I want to quickly go back to that previous episode because there is not something I missed, but something that after I recorded the episode, I discovered. There was this article that was really interesting. Remember in the last episode, found some extreme cases of people marrying things that maybe they shouldn't marry. But then I also wanted to showcase that not only did someone marry something and because one person had a crazy idea, but because maybe the heart of people is changing. So there was a fella in Australia that married his dog. After I recorded that episode, I found this article right here. This is from the Study Finds website. This article shows, and this was actually from Talker Research, this survey was of 2,000 dog owners. I don't know how scientific this is, but 2,000 dog owners surveyed, and they said, this is an interesting one here, of those surveyed, more than 2/3 of respondents described their dogs as their emotional twin, and over half, 56%, went even further, calling their dog their soulmate. That word jumped out at me. Since we were talking about marriage, and a lot of people talk about you got to find your soulmate in marriage, the idea that half of the people surveyed felt that their dog was maybe not the one they're supposed to marry, but a soulmate in a way, that a higher power brought these two people, well, a dog and a person together because they were destined to be together. That's pretty strong language, and it really makes you think about the way we as humans are starting to feel about love and connection, and even with our pets. But now back to this episode. In this episode, following up on that idea, we're going to talk about marriage. So the question of the day is, has the definition of marriage been wrong for the last few millennia? And has our brave new world finally got it right? Well, if you're watching this podcast, chances are you agree with me that we're not getting it more right, that we're actually going in a bad direction. So what is marriage anyway? I mean, you realize if marriage had a meaning, that maybe people would want to get married or not get married based upon the definition of what marriage is. I mentioned in the last episode that I felt, no scientific data to back this one up, I just felt that if you asked a gay couple 75 years ago, 100 years ago, if they wanted to get married, they'd probably look at you like you were nuts. Why would they want to get married? They're not straight. Why is that? Because marriage meant a societal recognition of family and inheritance. I came up with a couple things. Marriage meant child rearing. Marriage meant sustained traditional gender roles. Marriage meant something that a same-sex couple couldn't have, not because of the laws of man, but because of the laws of nature. That was just accepted. So let's take a close look at that definition. Definitions matter, folks. They really do matter. You'll notice in a lot of my episodes, I'm going to talk about definitions because the way we perceive things is by definitions. When I was a kid, if I didn't know what a word meant, you know what either my teacher or my parents would tell me? Go look it up. Get out the old dictionary and look up the word. This was back in the 80s. It was a different time. I think it was a good time, but it was a different time. So you'd look something up in the dictionary, find the definition. So let's take a look at a definition. Now, this is not the definition I would have read when I was a kid, but I like this definition a lot. This is from Noah Webster's 1828 dictionary. In this good old dictionary, Noah Webster defined marriage as the act of uniting a man and a woman for life. Marriage is a contract, both civil and religious, by which the parties engage to live together in mutual affection and fidelity till death shall separate them. Marriage was instituted by God Himself for the purpose of preventing the promiscuous intercourse of the sexes, for promoting domestic felicity, and for securing the maintenance and education of children. I love this definition. This is the best. Why didn't we just go back to that definition? Okay. So when I grew up, we had a newer dictionary. I actually have in my possession a dictionary from the 80s that I would have used growing up. So we can do some comparisons. Now, the one that I had growing up had some similarities. This 1980s definition. The old one says to join as husband and wife according to law or custom. It's a shortened version. It doesn't go into many details, but okay, it describes the basic thing. The new Merriam-Webster definition, if you want to, you can look this one up right now online. You can check out the Merriam-Webster website and find the new definition to join. Oh, no, sorry, that's the wrong one. That was the old one. The new definition, the state of being united as spouses in a consensual and contractual relationship recognized by law. There are two key differences right here that I want to point out. The first big difference here is obvious, glaring. Instead of this idea of husband and wife, male and female, all of a sudden now the new definition, of course, to be united as spouses. That can apparently be whatever you want it to be. But there's another key definition change too that I don't know if you noticed. It took out the whole idea about religion, about custom, about some sort of social ideas. It just makes it about the law now. It says to be united as spouses, recognized by law. Forget custom, forget religion, who cares? By law. If the government says it's law, guess what? There's your definition. Doesn't that make you feel better? You want to know a definition of something? Just ask your government. They'll tell you. Makes me feel very comfortable. Those are two key changes to the definition of marriage. And I think we're going to probably be changing that definition repeatedly moving forward, and I don't feel too great about it. What benefit did society get from marriage under the old definition? Well, there's a few things. I'll bring those up real quick. Is the idea that in Noah Webster's 1828 definition, he expanded upon that. Not only was it this civil and religious union where they agree to live together till death shall separate them, he goes on to say that marriage was instituted by God himself for the purpose of preventing promiscuous intercourse of the sexes, for promoting domestic felicity, for securing the maintenance and education of children. I think these are some significant things. The idea that this provides, in that context of marriage, a place where certain sexual needs can be dealt with. You have a responsibility to your partner to make sure this thing is taken care of. You have a responsibility to your partner to make sure you do not go outside of the context of marriage to take care of this. Otherwise, we're just like a tribe of monkeys just going nuts. It's chaos. There can be some real order when we take care of these needs in the context of marriage. Otherwise, promiscuous behavior can lead to the chaos that is children born out of wedlock, single mothers, broken families, situations that aren't healthy for society. Another key thing you see right here in this definition is the idea that it's really about the kids. Kids need the structure of marriage. What kind of structure? Is it significant, the structure in the previous definition, or if we redefine marriage, do we still have that kind of structure? We'll talk about that. But kids need to know that there's a place, their family unit, where they are taken care of. And that traditional family where a mother and a father stay together provides a great protected environment for those children. If that's non-existent, it's unhealthy for kids. It's unhealthy for the next generation. So looking at that definition of marriage, you see that there's some real positive things that all of society gets from that institution of marriage. When that marriage is done correctly, per the old definition, the way it benefits the family unit, the way it benefits the kids, the way it benefits all of society is positive. The structure provided by the institution of marriage is good for society. If we redefine marriage, will we get the same benefits? Will our society get less benefits from marriage? Will marriage change to the point that it might actually have some negative effects? Well, Terence thinks so. That's why I have created my list, the 7 things that Terence thinks will be negatively impacted by a redefining or rethinking about marriage. Now, Terence's 7 ideas are just my own ideas. So I did find some ideas online and I did incorporate some of those into my list. But this is not an exhaustive list. Maybe you guys can think of something else. If you guys think of another thing that should have been on my list, go to my website, nowthat'sthetruth.com, and you can contact me there. Reach out to me and mention some things that I missed, and I can discuss those in a future episode. The number one thing that Terence is worried about with the redefinition of marriage is how it's going to make marriage more about love, about a feeling. Is marriage about love? Well, there should be some love there. But is that what it is? If you look at the definition, you see the much bigger picture of what marriage really represents. There's more to it than an emotion. Yeah, you fall in love and you get married because of that emotion, but then you stay married because of something bigger than your emotion. If we lessen marriage to just being about how you feel, how about when those feelings change? If you get married, have jobs, careers, have kids, you're going to be going through a lot of different phases. and how you feel about your partner may change. I think if marriage is just about love in our minds, then when we don't feel quite as in love as we used to, it's going to cause more people to bail out on marriage instead of sticking around. And that's not good. It's going to make marriages shorter, increase the divorce rate, maybe even make a lot of people think if that's what marriage is, why bother getting married in the first place? Number two, speaking of divorce rates, I think divorce has a huge impact on kids. Everyone knows it. It is the truth. So, how does that affect the same sex couples? Well, first of all, I got to be honest with you. I've been scouring the internet trying to find good data, and it's not really out there. Census taken here in the United States really aren't tracking divorce rates based upon same-sex couples or regular couples. This data, after gay marriage being legal for 10 years, this data you would expect to be readily available, but it's not. Makes you kind of ask the question, why? Why are we not getting this information? A drastic change to the definition of marriage like this seems to think that it would require additional study to be done to make sure we're making the right decision. But you can't find that information at all. So I did my best. And I found that they did do a very good study on divorce rates in Finland. I know it's Finland, but they're human beings too. So they've actually had legalized same-sex marriage in Finland now for just a couple more years longer than here in the United States. So it's been a little over 10 years, and they did decide they should track this. And on that study, they found that lesbian couples had divorce rates more than twice that of regular couples. If you don't know, divorce rates among all married people is way too high. To think about what that would mean for lesbian couples to have twice the rate of divorces. It's a lot, very substantial, way more than half. Now, truthfully though, in opposite sex couples, the women do initiate most divorces, so you would think then gay marriage must be the most stable union in the world. Well, that exact same study actually showed that gay couples were still 20% more likely to have divorce than regular couples. So the information you find kind of tells the story that doing marriage the traditional way per God's design seems to still create more stability than that of same-sex marriage. Now, here in the United States, trying to find some better information, once again, very hard to come by. There was a study, you can find this on Taylor and Francis online from the Marriage and Family Review. Their study found that same-sex couples were 50% more likely to get divorced than different-sex couples. So there's a lot of different information out there, and if you find reliable sources, you get an interesting story that tells you that especially among lesbian couples, but really among all same-sex couples, you see an increased divorce rate. Well, what does that matter? The reason I bring up this as my second point is because the effect that it has on children. If you take a look at the National Institute of Health, their website, it states that an extensive body of work makes it clear that the more family structure transitions children face, the lower their level of well-being on average. What does it mean by extensive body of work? What they mean is study after study after study shows the same thing, that all of those structural family structure transitions, divorces, remarriage, mixed families, all that stuff, the more of that happens, how it affects the children. It affects their well-being. This pattern holds across multiple domains of well-being, including problem behavior, health, emotional well-being, and then later on in life, socioeconomic attainment, and relationship stability in adulthood. These things do affect kids. If you have a mixed family or you've been through that, you understand. It can be tough on kids, right? It's just a fact of life. If we could have less of these things impacting kids, it would be healthier for those kids. Having mother modeling motherhood and father modeling fatherhood, having a mother and a father as a leading indicator of successful children. Just the truth. The number 3 thing that Terrence is worried about is that this new way of defining marriage and letting anyone get married is really going to make children more of a commodity than what I think a child's supposed to be. A byproduct of love and a loving marriage. Not like getting a puppy. Oh, they got a puppy. The puppy is so cute. Can we get one? I don't want people to be thinking about kids that way. Hey, they have a kid. Can we have one? Well, technically speaking, by scientific reasons, no. No, you can't have a kid. Well, let's find out a way to have a kid because we want to have a kid. It worries me. Speaking of which, as I'm talking about this, understanding what I mean by being made from love. Talk about the miracle that a child is. I'm going to have to bring up some song lyrics. Okay. When I had my first daughter, me and my wife, we had our first child. And when that beautiful daughter was born, song lyrics popped into my head and I couldn't get them out. The idea that an act of love, an act of surrender and love and celebration of that love brings about new life. There is something crazy about that. God's design for this world is beautiful. But yeah, I thought about that, and this lyrics to this song, Isn't She Lovely by Stevie Wonder, popped in there. Some of the lyrics go like this. I never thought through love we'd be making one as lovely as she. Isn't she lovely? Made from love. I can't believe what God has done. Through us, He's given life to one. But isn't she lovely? Made from love. It's a real beautiful way to think of children. And when a child is a byproduct of love, what that child means in that marriage, the significance of keeping that marriage together. There's a lot there, right? So if it's more like, hey, they're having a kid, why can't we have one too? Let's find out a way to have kids. How? I think that the unnatural things that's going to happen is what I worry about the most. Yeah, there's adoption. That's okay. But interesting thing, some statistics showed that, this was from the UCLA Williams Institute, said that 40% of same-sex couples want to have kids. And a lot of them want to have their own kids. Well, what do you mean by your own? Well, there's one thing. It's going to mean either surrogate mothers or sperm donors, right? Because there's a biological problem here. With that in mind, I found a few more interesting things. When I was looking at the internet, I found a giving tree surrogacy. They want to make sure there's surrogate mothers for people. Yeah, that's cool. Then they had one page that was just dedicated to encouraging people to be mothers for gay men so that a gay couple can have a kid, encouraging people to do that, to accept the responsibility of being a mother of a child so that a same-sex couple can feel like they're included. They're not excluded from this. We want everyone to be included. It's inclusiveness, right? Everyone can have a kid. Why not? But truthfully, there is something kind of unnatural about that, in my opinion. Here's an interesting article. You may have seen something like this. It is a little bit weird and scary, but this was from the Guardian. Scientists create mice with two fathers after making eggs from male cells. They're not doing this with human beings yet, but you can see why they're going certain directions. Isn't that a little bit scary? Toying with mixing DNA and creating babies in a lab? Speaking of song lyrics, it makes me think of another one. In the year 65, 65, ain't gonna need no husbands, won't need no wives. If you remember that song. But it's a little bit scary, isn't it? Something doesn't seem natural about this. So I'm worried about divorce rates. I'm worried about how those divorce rates affect kids. I'm worried about making kids into a commodity. 4, I'm worried that this new definition is going to make the idea of a mother or a father an expendable thing. Do you really need a mom? Apparently not. You can do a family without one. Well, first of all, I'd like you to tell that to your mom. Think she'll tell you otherwise. Don't say that to your mom. Oh no, you do need a mother and you do need a father. What they both contribute to that marriage, to that family unit, and how it affects the kids and their ability to grow up, it's big. If any of you out there are single parents right now trying to do this thing alone, you get it. It's tough. Bet you there's many a times you thought, goodness sakes, I would love to have a partner in this one. It's the truth. Doing this thing without either a mother or a father is tough. And it's not, obviously, per God's design. If you're stuck in that situation for whatever reason, it may not be because of, you're doing anything wrong or against God's design. Maybe your spouse passed away. I don't know. But you do know that it's tough. That's for sure. And God had a design for a marriage. If you're put in that kind of trial, it's tough. Good luck and good for doing what you do. But anyone can understand that having a mother and a father is a good thing. That is a leading indicator of successful children. It's just the truth. Having a father modeling what fatherhood looks like and a mother modeling what motherhood looks like is what children need to see. Also, when you only see in your parents one side of this spectrum, you only see the male side or you only see the female side, it does affect what you think of marriage and how you can relate to the opposite sex. It's just the truth. American Sociological Review did a study. It showed that children of lesbians are less likely to conform to traditional gender roles and more likely to engage in homosexual behavior. And girls raised by lesbians are more sexually adventurous and get into more trouble. These are just statistics here. I just found these on the internet, but it's interesting, right? That when you only get one side, either the male or the female, you're missing an important component. If you are a single parent out there and you want your child to have that influence from the other sex, hey, you might think about seeing if there's someone at church that your kid can hang out with. Maybe finding some sort of mentoring thing so you can bring that into your child's life. Because I know it can be tough doing this with only one. All right, number 5. I think that changing the definition of marriage, and I don't think, I know, it's going to ensure that homosexuality is taught as normal in schools. Not only if homosexuality is legal and okay, but if it's sanctioned by the government as being completely normal in the context of marriage. And there's no way you're going to be able to change the curriculum in your school or have your child opt out of certain curriculum being taught in school. Your kid's going to be stuck learning that one for sure. Number 6, I think that this will also eventually force churches to sanction or perform weddings. I really, really do believe it, folks. Remember, they tried to force the hand of a baker that wouldn't bake a cake, although he had baked cakes for many same-sex couples. But when it came to the idea of creating a wedding cake for a gay wedding, this religious man said, no, I can't do that because I'm a Christian and it goes against my religious beliefs. They sued the guy. And they won. The idea of forcing someone who has a business to do something that violates their religious beliefs because it's a normal kind of marriage, right? Think about it. If a church, it's a nice fancy church, it's a historic church, it's beautiful, the stained glass windows, people love to get married there because it's a great place to get married. If a church opens up to allow people who don't attend to get married there as well, what's to stop some group from saying that church has to allow a gay wedding to happen there? I don't see anything that's going to stop that from happening in the future. It's kind of a dangerous, slippery slope legally for where churches sit in their ability to say no to gay marriage, for them to stand up for God's view of marriage, and for our rights as Christians to say what the Bible says about homosexuality. Lastly, I think that if we change the definition once or again, what's to stop them from changing the definition again and again? Why not? This could usher in bigamy, thruples, quadruples. I don't know. Why not? Why stop with just gay marriage? If we can change marriage to just be about love, a lot of people can be in love, right? I see this as a thing where once we change this definition once, it's going to open this up to making marriage kind of mean nothing anymore, because anybody and everybody and everything will be able to participate. I mean, why not keep changing the definition as our culture changes, right? Well, I think it'd be better off for us to conform our culture instead of changing marriage. But that's just me. So as I was doing some research for this episode, scouring the internet for good stuff, came across a really good article, and I thought, I've got to include this. This says it better than anything. So I found this article. It's titled Behavior, the American Family, Future Uncertain. First paragraph reads like this: America's families are in trouble. Trouble so deep and pervasive as to threaten the future of our nation, declares a major report last week in the White House Conference on Children. Can the family survive? Students in rebellion, the young people living in communes, unmarried couples living together, call in question the very meaning and structure of the stable family unit as our society has known it. This whole thing goes on to say even more stuff. The next paragraph talks about the birth rate going down, divorce rate going up, children running away from their homes. Terrible. Then I look a little closer at this, and I realize, what? This article's from 1970. Are you kidding me? Geez, it reads like it could be today. Why do I bring this up? Because do not think for a moment, folks, that this is some new thing, that the enemy is now attacking the institution of marriage and attacking the family. Oh yeah, that's not any news, folks. This has been going on since the beginning of time. Don't think that Adam and Eve didn't have a little rough patch after the whole forbidden fruit thing. There are troubles in marriage, and there are attacks on marriage all the time. I can imagine that conversation. Don't have conversations with snakes ever again. Which is actually really good advice. But yeah, the idea is that this is not the first time marriage has been attacked. Let's take a look right here. Thought this was interesting. In 1794, Prussia allowed for childless couples, mind you, to get divorced without any grounds. In California, in 1969, it became the first U.S. state to allow divorce, once again, without any grounds. You used to have to show there was infidelity, there was something going on, there was some reason for divorce. They said, you know what? You don't love me anymore. There's a reason. Get a divorce. People are allowed to remarry without any question about previous marriages. Anybody can adopt kids. Now, even same-sex couples can marry and adopt children. Our society permits, legally and socially permits. It's socially acceptable for people to live like spouses while remaining unmarried. Not the first attack. You guys might have noticed some of these things have been going on for a while. Not the first attack on marriage at all. So, what is God's view of marriage? That's what I want to look at now. So, what's God's view on marriage? We Christians believe that God designed marriage. So, what does the Bible say about that? I think it matters. Well, let's start by going way back to the beginning. You guys may remember in the beginning of the Bible, the book of Genesis, God's making stuff. He makes a whole universe. He makes a planet. He makes all the things in it. You know when he's done making something, he says, now that is good. I might be paraphrasing a little bit, but the general idea is God makes something and says, it is good. God makes good things. What's the first thing that's not good? Well, it's not something that God made per se, but instead it's a situation. God makes man, and he says, it is not good for man to be alone. This is an important part of the story, folks. Pay attention. So God says, let's make Adam a helper. Now, if you're going to find a helper, you want to find the right person for the job. For instance, if my wife sees me walking out to the car, I got my tools, I open up the hood, my wife immediately thinks, this is not good. Terrence, he has a little problem with tools. We don't get along. He doesn't know how to use them. Chances are, if Terrence is going to work on the car, something bad's going to happen. So she probably immediately starts thinking of who she can call to get one of my friends over here to help me with this project. And if she's going to call up a friend, she's probably going to call the friend that's very good at working on cars, right? You find the right helper for the job. When God is finding the right helper for Adam to get through the game of life, he doesn't find another fella. There is some real significance in the fact that God gave Adam a woman, a wife, Eve. This is a very important part of the story, very important part. And also later on in Mark chapter 10, when Jesus was questioned about marriage and divorce, he wants to give a little lesson on marriage, and he goes way back to the start, way back to Genesis. And speaking of Adam and Eve, male and female, Jesus said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and shall be joined to his wife. For what reason? Because God made them male and female. What more reason do you need? Because God made them male and female. For that reason, the two should get together and be married. What more reason do you need? That sounds good to me. And then Jesus goes on to say, whoever divorces his wife and remarries another commits adultery. Just like God said, what's brought together, let no one break that apart. The idea is God is giving a pretty clear definition of marriage right here. Man and woman for life. Jesus, when he was here on earth, Mark chapter 10, just talked about it, goes right back to the beginning to give an explanation to people about what marriage is supposed to be. Does that matter? I think that it matters. I think that if we do marriage God's way, we're going to be better off. That's why I'm worried about this new definition, because when we take marriage and make it less and less and less like the original definition and the original design, we make it less and less and less effective and not have the same benefit on society that it used to have. So when you're talking with the world about what you believe about marriage and reasons why you think the new definition of marriage might have a negative impact, people are going to ask you questions. With the questions and answer session, of course, you know this is not a live show. You're not calling in. If you think of another good question, you remember what to do. Go to my website, hit the contact me thing, and bring up another question you think that someone might ask, something that I should have addressed, and we can talk about it later. But right now, I think of a few things that the world might ask. I asked my family, hey, what kind of questions is the world going to ask about us and our view of marriage? The first one that came up, why? The first question that I was confronted with was, why? It's a one-word question, but there's some implications here. The real implication is, why do you care? Why do you want someone else to not be able to do marriage there? Or why do you care about what someone else does? How does it affect you? It's a valid question, but if that general question of why comes up, that's why I spent the last 40 minutes yapping. It's because I believe there is a why. The why is I'm worried about redefining marriage and making marriage not mean as much anymore. Having it affect the kids in a negative way, having it affect the whole social consciousness of what marriage means, and wrecking the whole thing. That's what I'm worried about, and that's why I talked for so long about statistics, data, and about what I believe. If anyone asks the question, why, what do you care? That's the key thing to focus on. Well, I care because I think this. Know what it is that you believe. Now, other things that people might ask you, I thought of some questions myself. And I've heard questions like this, so you guys might be able to relate to them. So someone might say to you, I thought Jesus told his followers to love people who are different than them. There's a nice trick question. Jesus was asked a lot of trick questions. Don't expect you're going to get off the hook. Trick questions are going to be asked of you as well, and we need to be ready for them. Do not shy away from talking to someone about what you believe because of that fear of the trick question. Remember what we talked about in episode 2 and 3, I think. Being ready and having a game plan for when something like that comes up. But this is the trick question. When they say, I thought Jesus told his followers to love people who are different than them. Okay, the key thing is if you encourage someone to change their behavior or to do something different, does that mean you don't love them? I'm sure a person would ask you that question if they had a friend who seemed to be developing a gambling problem and weren't very good at gambling, kept misplacing all of this money. I bet you would want to, or any of us, they would want to get involved and talk to that friend. Help that friend to change their behavior. Would it be unloving to try to help your friend not make these kind of mistakes? I don't think so. In fact, I think it's very loving to be willing to stand up and try to help even when it's uncomfortable. What if your friend starts developing a drinking problem? You can remain silent on that one. Or are you going to try to help? I think it's more loving to try to help. To say that because you disagree with someone and think that someone may be making a choice that might have consequences that affect them in the long term, hurt them or hurt the ones they love, and that you want to get involved and try to help, that doesn't mean you don't love them. In fact, that kind of means you do love them. I think we need to think about what it means to love someone. Trying to help them make good choices is love. Another good question someone might ask is, if there are same-sex couples in the world already, why not just let them marry? The answer I have to this one is that, number one, if same-sex couples already exist and already existed when they weren't allowed to legally get married, then why do they need to legally get married? I think that's a real better question. If you can be a same-sex couple without marriage, why do you need marriage? What protections are there in marriage that the same-sex couple needs? But beyond that, I think the key thing is that when you ask that question, isn't it better to just let them marry? Well, it's not about letting them do something, because as we talked about in the previous episode, a gay person could get married. They just didn't want to get married. It's not so much allowing them to do something, it's changing the definition of marriage. And if there are downstream consequences of redefining a marriage in a book and on a website and in the social consciousness of everyone in the United States of America, then I say let's think about those consequences before we change the definition. Before we just open marriage up to anyone and everyone for whatever reason, let's think about what consequences there could be. Because I believe that we shouldn't allow anyone to do anything that they want to do so that they feel included if it has a negative impact on everyone else. Which kind of brings me up to another one right here. A lot of these questions sound the same. They might ask that old question, what right do you have to impose your views on someone else? And this is really important here, folks, because when you say, what right do you have to impose your views on someone else, there's a reverse thing going on here. If someone says that to you, then obviously they don't think your views should be shared, right? They believe their views are better than your views, and maybe your views should be silenced so it doesn't affect theirs. They don't want your views to be heard. That's why they're talking about you being able to voice your opinion. So there is an obvious problem with that question, but the bigger question here is when someone says, what right do you have to impose your view of marriage on others, is the key point that the Christian conservative is not the one who's been wanting to change the definition of marriage. You notice that? The other side of this argument has been the one that's been trying to change it. We haven't been trying to change anything. We just want it to remain the way it has been, thinking that it was done right before and that we're getting it wrong now. So the key thing is we're not the one trying to change the definition. Which leads me to another one. When someone says, marriage is a fundamental human right. I really don't like this one at all. I don't like when people start talking about their fundamental human rights. It's dangerous. I know that this is a country that became a country because of our rights, our liberties. It was all about our liberty to not be connected to Great Britain. And then once we formed our own constitution, spent a lot of time, the first 10 amendments, speaking about our rights as individuals to make sure government doesn't get in the way. Government shall pass no law affecting my right to whatever. And that mindset has really affected us Americans to thinking we have rights to something that maybe we don't have rights to. It's kind of like that idea, you might have seen the bumper stickers, that health care is a right, not a privilege. Why? Health care? Plus, I think that's really a bad one, because if health care, something that costs money, is a right for one person, then that's an obligation for someone else to pay for it. If it's your right to free health care, it's someone else's responsibility obligation, their requirement to pay for it even if they don't want to. That's not fair. When there's consequences that affect everyone, maybe you shouldn't get the right to do whatever you want. So, speaking of that, and I know a lot of people watching this we're real Americans. We love our rights. No one can take my right away. So if you get offended, I'm sorry. But think about this for a moment. Do you think you should have the freedom to go hunting if you're blind? I don't mean, legally blind. You need some help walking through the woods. No, I mean you're just blind. Should you have the right, because you're an American, to go wandering through the woods with a gun shooting at things? I don't think so. Should you have a right, a fundamental American right, to go fly a commercial airliner if you haven't been trained, if you haven't been certified, if you don't know what you're doing? I don't think so. And the idea is that with this whole fundamental human right, my freedoms, if you are incapable of doing something because of impossibilities, physical impossibilities, lack of ability, should you have the right to do it just because? If your right is a danger to yourself and to others, should you have a right to do it? I don't think so. This is kind of like this idea of the gay marriage. Should it be a right for anyone to get married if the downstream effect is hurtful for all of society? I don't think so. I don't want to think of this as some sort of fundamental human right, because kinda anybody could get married. It was now marriage is starting to mean something else. This freedom, this fundamental human right, this freedom is not really a freedom to get married. This freedom is really a freedom of a select group of people to change the rules to the game for everyone else. Now that's the truth. Keep in mind what this thing really is. It's about some people deciding they can change the rules for everyone. That's why all the rest of us need to speak up on what we believe marriage should be. All right, now this might have been a little bit of a tough episode for some of you. I get that. There's a lot of concepts we talked about, but now you kind of ask the question, what do we do? Are Christians doomed? Is there nothing we can do to save this system? Well, we need to be ready with an answer when anyone asks. And be confident in what we know and what we believe. So you might want to watch the episode again, take some notes. But the key thing I want to leave you guys with, and this is maybe the most important thing, is that we Christians should not look at this world in decline and think it's hopeless for the Christian community. If anything, this is our time to shine. As the world's fallen quick, we have a chance to be a beacon of light when we do life God's way. Same thing with marriage. If we did marriage God's way, if we saw the big picture of marriage, God's intention for what marriage was supposed to be, and do marriage His way, we can have amazing marriages. We can have marriages that stay together. We can have kids that grow up in that kind of environment and end up turning out great. We can be that beacon of light that the world looks at and wants to know what we're doing right. There's this funny little article I want to bring up. This one cracks me up. This is from the Babylon Bee. Above and beyond, this man is such a fierce proponent of traditional marriage that he's participated in 4 of them. That one cracks me up. I love that one. Modern culture is tearing down the sacred union between man and wife, Black told reporters gathered outside his home Friday, which he got as a part of his divorce settlement with his third wife, Patricia. Legislatures don't define marriage, God does. It's a funny article. It'll crack you up. You really need to look at that yourself. You can go to my website, click on the episodes, and with each episode, you're going to see all the different links. You can click on that one and read the whole article for fun. It is satire. It's here to make you laugh. But the key thing is, folks, is that you laugh at it because there's a little bit of reality to it. How many people want to be or speak of themselves as being real proponents of God's traditional view of marriage, but don't actually do it? Don't actually do marriage God's way. If we're going to be fierce proponents of God's view of marriage, we need to really live it out God's way. That's how we can make a real difference. Interesting little story here. I made this realization earlier on in my life, but when I was younger, I was a young married man. I noticed some difference in couples, and there's lots of different couples out there. I kind of thought of two in particular. I noticed one couple was a Christian couple. They went to church, believed their Bible, and treated each other like dirt. Didn't respect each other, didn't serve each other sacrificially. They didn't even talk nice to each other. They weren't going to get divorced because the Bible specifically said not to get divorced. God hates divorce, so it says in the Bible. So they were going to stay together and be miserable the whole time. And then there was another couple that weren't Christians. They didn't go to church. They probably didn't really know what the Bible said about marriage. But somehow, because God has put a little bit of wisdom in all of us, a lot of it we often reject, sometimes people just know stuff. There is a right and wrong behavior, and we know that. They somehow, without really even knowing it, treated each other with respect, did serve each other, did look out for each other's needs. They did marriage God's way without even knowing it. Their marriage was great. It was successful. There was love between them. Sometimes it's not really that I'm trying to word this the right way, so bear with me. I'm just saying that you can do marriage God's way and have a successful marriage, even if you're not a Christian. Key thing is for us Christians, we definitely need to do marriage God's way. And we've got all the resources. We've got God's Word. We've got the Holy Spirit living in us. We can access it any time. The ultimate spirit guide. We've got all the resources we need. If we can do marriage God's way, if we can read His Word, find out what we're supposed to do in this life, learn what love is. Learn how to love and then practice loving your spouse. If we can do this God's way and have good marriages, following biblical principles, then as the marriage in the rest of the world just falls away to have no meaning whatsoever, they can look to the Christian community and see marriage done right and see the structure that it brings. And then those people in the world will come to us for advice. This is our chance. When the world loses sight of the big picture of what marriage is and why marriage is, this is our chance to be able to live out the real purpose of marriage in our lives and be a beacon of light to the world. This is not terrible. Think of it as our next challenge. Our challenge to be who God has called us to be in every way, including in marriage, and show the world the benefits. Now that's the truth. Thanks again so much for tuning in, everyone. I had a lot of fun with that. I know it was a lot of material. I talked too much, but hopefully some of that information was helpful for you to be able to formulate the right kind of responses to people when you talk about your view of marriage and why it matters. Know your stuff and be ready for the conversation, and let's live it out in our lives. So Remember, if you like these episodes, what do? Subscribe on my YouTube channel and share these episodes with your little buddies. Thanks again. God bless. See you next time.